Hello everyone and welcome to your Resilience Day of Springboard. So some of you I'll have seen this morning and some of you I'll be seeing this afternoon, but this part you'll be doing online along with the resources I sent you out via email previous to this day. So just to say, I'm going to run through the whole session. The video itself will last about 45 minutes, then with the activities added. But please just pause me at any point, and the sections I'll ask you to think about things, just pause me or carry on and do it at the end. It's really up to you. But if you've got any questions or queries, please feel free to email me, phone me, whatever. I'm here for you guys. So first of all, we're going to start talking about stress. So the aims are to understand the causes of our stress, understand the physical signs of stress, gain insight into how we manage our own stress, but also being aware of our colleagues' stress too and how we can support them. Obviously, Springboard is sort of setting us up to be band 6s or higher. It's just about how we're able to support our colleagues as well and recognise that and give them tips in how they can help with their stress. So I want you to think about what stress means to you, but also what does recovery mean to you as well. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, stress depends on individuals. It can vary. What might stress me out might be quite different to something that may stress you out, but there's things that can have an impact on that. And so that's individual views, our cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, our individual perception of changes, knowledge, previous experience. Like that exercise I asked you to do, obviously I get you up doing that in class today, so hopefully you've all got someone that you're able to do that with at home, and it's that 1, 2, 3 counting with your partner. And actually when you've added in the slap, the clap, that all feels quite difficult, but when you go back to just the 1, 2, 3, that seems really easy and it flows a lot better. So I want you to think about why that is, and actually I think that's because you've had experience of it, you've added more into that, so that's been more stressful, but then you kind of relax when you go back to do that 1, 2, 3 again, and it seems easier. So it kind of just shows you what effect stress can have on the brain and how that then can cause you to make errors or feel a bit more anxious, so it's a bit jilted in your thought process and your reactions of that. So I want you to think about that for yourselves as well, not putting too much pressure on yourselves when you're doing new tasks, but also making you aware about when your colleagues are carrying out new tasks for the first time, being able to support them and actually how much of an impact that will have on them when they go back to do that the second time or the third time. And it's just about being supportive for yourself and your colleagues. Also, when we think about when balance is disturbed, so often you may all be aware of some of your coping mechanisms that you have now, and we'll be going through some of them and hopefully you'll be able to build on that a little bit. But it's being aware that when those coping mechanisms are affected, so obviously in the last few months with the coronavirus pandemic, some of those normal coping mechanisms we may have had, like seeing friends or family, sort of distractions from work may not have been there. So I think it's really normal if a lot of us have been feeling more stressed than usual, and that's okay. It's understanding why that might be happening and actually just how we're able to cope with that. So mental stress is an extreme adverse psychological response to personal perception of uncontrollable pressure, tension or strain. Stress check. So normally in class we might have a little discussion about who feels a bit stressed now, why that is and what's going on, and just have a bit of a talk about that. So if you are stressed about anything, please feel free to contact me. So I kind of just say, anyone raise their hand if they're feeling stressed right now. So I'm feeling a little bit stressed right now. I'm sure some of you are, we're working in different ways and things. This is new for me, so it's all about, a bit stressful, but we're working with it. And I'm here to support you. So if you're feeling stressed about anything, I'm here to support you. And hopefully on the support day, we'll go through some other things that can help. So I want you to all think about understanding stress, understanding what stress is. So stress obviously is a normal part of life, and a certain level of stress can be healthy and motivating. But what stress does is a surge in hormones that are produced by the hypothalamus, which releases adrenaline and cortisol. The adrenaline increases our blood pressure and heart rate, and it gives us that extra energy, that flight or fight response that you'll have heard of. when it becomes an issue is normally our body can regulate itself. Once that stress is gone, the body regulates itself and brings back that blood pressure and heart rate back down to a normal level. When we've got a problem is when we're in that stress zone all the time, and actually that impact is happening and those hormones are in our body for a long period of time, we're not able to bring that back down. And that's what I want you to think about, is actually how we're able to bring those levels down so our body can regulate itself back into a normal level. So when we're thinking about stress, obviously we've mentioned it's a normal part of life, and actually when you look at this sort of diagram, it's a good place to be is in the green zone, that stretch zone. That stretch can be often quite motivating, giving us that push to make things better, move forward and plan things and make a difference. If you're in that comfort zone, actually, although you've got a lot of time, you're not sort of motivated to do those things, and that's quite not a great place to be. Actually, as humans, we like to be motivated and challenged. It's when we're in the panic zone, it can be really sort of a dangerous place to be. Those hormones are up all the time and we just can't get back. So it might be that we're overloaded at work, we've got stuff going on at home that we're not able to sort of shut off from. Lots of different reasons why we're in that panic zone. But I want you to be aware of when that panic zone, or you might be entering that panic zone yourselves, and be able to bring yourself back into that green zone. Or actually when you're looking after colleagues, thinking about, are they in that panic zone and how can I help them bring them back? What can I do to help them? So the effects of stress are not only physical, we've got behavioural effects of stress, and sort of recognising that in yourself, your colleagues, your friends, family. So it might be the avoidance of situations, finding social situations disturbing, becoming withdrawn, excessive checking or urges to escape certain situations. Physical effects, we've talked about the blood pressure and things, but that can, when you're raising heart rate, obviously that could cause palpitations, chest pain, dizziness, even headaches. Psychological and cognitive effects, unrealistic or excessive fear, over worrying, irritability, impatience, anger, confusion or vivid dreams or thoughts. So these are some of the short and long-term effects of stress, and that's when that stress level is not being able to regulate itself. There are situations where you will become stressed, and that's quite normal, but it's just making sure we're able to bring that level back down so our body can regulate itself. So some of the short and long-term effects of stress are reduced concentration and memory, poor sleep, reduced immunity, fatigue, digestive disorders, muscular aches and pains, mood fluctuations, increased risk of depression, becoming withdrawn, heart disease, affecting your relationships, making poor diet choices. Just being aware of these things and why we need to understand stress in ourselves and bring that back down to normal. I want you to think about your own capacity as a bucket of paint. So as you fill that with more stressors, your bucket becomes fuller and fuller and fuller. And when it gets to the top, that's when you're at risk of sort of being in that panic zone and it just overfilling and you're not being able to cope and regulate that back down again. So I want you to think about how you're able to bring that down, your coping mechanisms, but also knowing when to say, actually, I can't take this on, it will be a bit too much. That doesn't show a weakness, and that's absolutely okay. It just shows self-awareness. So we're going to talk a little bit again about self-care, but I love this image as it suggests that you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. Our patients will be affected by how you're feeling in yourselves, and that care to them will be affected if you're not feeling 100%. When we look at this, it shows that when we've got a bit of pressure, actually engagement is good, like I said, can be very motivating. When we move into tension, we're then sort of verging on a sense of strain that can start to have an impact on the performance of a team. And then when you're in that stress zone, actually that can be really catastrophic and cause the whole team to be disengaged in what we're trying to do, but also lead to serious health issues with yourselves or your colleagues. There's also a different way of just looking at when we've got, so when we're in the pressure, the comfort zone, we've got a high concentration, but actually it's quite intense and we're not necessarily that motivated. When you move into tension, it's a good place to be, is the concentration and attention is still high. But you can see as you move into stress and strain, that quickly goes up, and actually we have either lower concentration levels or concentration is completely lost. This is when people are going to make errors, or things will happen and our patients will be affected. I know some days can feel a bit like this. When you're at work trying to stay positive can be really difficult. It's just about being aware of these things, and we're still going to have days where we feel like this, but it's just being aware of how we might be able to regulate that in ourselves and our colleagues, building our reservoir of things we can build upon. So that's how resilience comes in. If you've got any questions about stress, please contact me. But just a brief overview of what stress is and what causes it. So when we talk about resilience, this is what we have to be able to deal with stress and cope with it a little bit better. So the aims and objectives are to understand the importance of resilience, understand how we can affect other people's resilience around us, gain insight into our own resilience and how we can improve. So what is resilience? Well, it's often wrongly viewed as something that people are more natural at, almost like you're born with it, a bit of charisma, all about mindset. Resilience is something we can learn, and it's something we can build upon and get better at. I like this little image as it kind of shows what I think sums up resilience, is that bend or break. If you think of a stick, actually you're able to bend and adapt to changing situation, or do you just snap? But being resilient is someone that is able to perform well under pressure, bounce back more quickly, manage their moods, communicate more clearly, and have a high level of emotional well-being. So like I said, this is about you being aware of when maybe you're taking on too much, or being aware of what you can do to help support yourself and your mental health more appropriately and better. So there's the little video clip I've given you. Just have a little look at it. It will give you a sort of visual guide into what resilience is. So again, we're just going to touch upon the misconceptions about resilience. So you can only apply resilience in the same sense you've learned it. So obviously I said that resilience will be built in terms of not getting too stressed when you've been exposed to a situation. The next time you're more confident. However, those coping mechanisms and your resilience reservoir, or things you can pull upon to help with your resilience, is something you can do for many situations. It's about being tough. Well, absolutely not. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're cold-hearted or you don't care as much. It's just knowing of when it's becoming too much, how you deal with that, how you offload and take that pressure off a little bit. Having resilience means fewer problems. Definitely not. It means just that you're able to cope with them, or know how to cope with them better. You either have it or you don't. So like I said, it's something that can be learned, and hopefully with your quizzes that you've done, you'll just be able to look at ways that you might be able to help improve and build upon that resilience, and help others to build upon their own resilience too. So why is it important? Well, resilience is what gives people the psychological strength to cope with stress and hardship. And obviously, working in the environment that we do, we all know we're exposed to stress. And that's normal to feel that, but it's just knowing how to cope with that and how to deal with that. So it's about ensuring people have the mental reservoir and strength to help them bounce back. So by constantly keeping yourself under review, how you can bounce back from those situations and make sure you're okay. Resilience is about acknowledging, so having that emotional connection with yourself, acknowledging when you're distressed, but having the coping mechanisms to tackle that head on, and knowing what to use and how to cope with that. So like I mentioned, hopefully you've all filled in the resilience quiz. Normally we do that in the classroom, but do that now if you haven't, pause me. But it will just identify areas that you may already be very resilient in, or have those coping mechanisms, but also identify areas where maybe you could look at building upon that a little bit and adding to your reservoir for resilience. So how can you build your resilience for further stress? So your support network ensuring that you've got a strong network of friends, families, outside of work, but also your colleagues as well here in the trust. They can all be an enormous buffer to help with stress. Having people you can count on in your lives makes life's pressures seem a little bit less overwhelming. It might be that you're just able to share that with someone and offload a little bit. I'm sure you're all aware that actually, you know, the relationships you have with colleagues, and we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth later, but it can have a huge impact of how you're actually able to deal with that stress here every day. Your sense of control. If you have the confidence in yourself and your ability to influence events and preserve those challenges, it's easier to take the stress in your stride. When we feel we have no control over a situation, it can feel like it overwhelms us. We're going to talk a little bit later about how we might be able to break down those stresses, but like I say, just make sure you feel like you're in control of things. Definitely helps. So building resilience, your attitude and outlook, the way you look at life is inevitable. That the challenges may have a huge effect on your ability to deal with stress. So it's often thought that those that are more cheerful and optimistic can cope better with stress. They're less vulnerable to becoming overwhelmed by stress because of that positive mindset. You had your positive mindset thing, so just how you think of things can make a difference, and hopefully you can see that, how maybe you can train your mind into thinking that. So it doesn't mean they'll necessarily have less stress, it's just sometimes it makes a difference as to how you can cope. For instance, if you come on shift and you know you're short-staffed, if you've got someone next to you saying, oh, for God's sake, I don't want to be here, or oh, really negative, God, yeah, again, but actually that can have a really negative impact on the whole team and yourself. But if in your head you say, okay guys, well, we've got this amount of staff, we're going to spread it out like this, like let's all just work together and get through the day, but we'll get there and we'll be able to provide good patient care, that automatically makes you feel different about it. But just thinking about that and thinking about what you say in a positive way can actually have a massive impact on staff and yourself, actually, when you say it out loud, how much it has an impact on what you're thinking and feeling as well. Your ability to deal with emotions. So like I said, always being aware of your triggers. So you know, if you feel like you're going to have quite a stressful week because you've got quite a lot on, how you're going to bring that back down, do a checklist, feel like you're able to cope with that. Giving you ability to have that control again. And being aware of yourself, your emotions, and how you're feeling then. Ensuring we have a healthy work-life balance. So I know often this can feel quite hard when we're working shifts, night shifts, it's hard to sort of balance that. But it's important that we know our boundaries, that if we do have to take work home for some reason, or you might be, you know, your springboard stuff, ensuring that you have a workplace at home and stick to it. Don't let that overflow into your comfortable home, not work life. It will just help those stresses when you associate that workspace with work and the other spaces in your house with enjoyment. Your sense of control we've talked about, so that's just helping with that control. When we're talking about the control, we're thinking about a to-do list. So at the end of each day, go over your to-do list and write up one for the next day. So, you know, if you're stressed at work or whatever, write yourself a to-do list, tick off what you've done, and then you can carry on what you haven't been able to get done for the next day. It also will just help with yourself not running over it at night thinking, oh, I haven't done that. Actually, it's written down and you can leave it, worry about it tomorrow. And just thinking about your commute home, if you commute, a walk in the car, use that time to unwind. Just take that time to sort of reflect on the day, whether you want to listen to music, a book, podcast, whatever it is, just take that time out for yourself. So these are a few things we're just going to go over a bit more about loving yourself, about that pouring from an empty cup, that self-care, your social networks, flexibility, problem solving, about being proactive rather than reactive to situations, time management, and that growth mindset that we've talked about. So self-belief, I really believe that, you know, having confidence in your own ability is really important to help build your resilience. we are going to get criticised. We all make errors sometimes, you know, sometimes you might get negative feedback. Try not to dwell on that too much. It's important that we reflect on those feedback, but also just trying to remind yourselves of the strengths and accomplishments that you have achieved. That might not just be work-related things, but also just sort of thinking, actually, I'm a good mum, I'm a good daughter, oh, I can swim 1,000 miles or whatever, you know, even if it's silly little things, just reminding yourself of your strengths and accomplishments. Because self-esteem is really important and it helps us to recover from stress. So when you hear a negative comment, it might be about your work, just thinking, actually, well, I did that really well and I've done that well, you know, don't dwell on all those negatives. I know often it's hard that one negative kind of gets rid of 10 positives, but just try and remind yourself of the positives. And when you're thinking about giving your colleagues negative feedback, it's sometimes just thinking actually about, but you've done this really well and I'm really pleased with you for that, but let's just reflect on this right now. It's important that you're confident in your own abilities, and your ability to deal with a crisis is a great way to build your future resilience. Social support, so we've talked about this before, and like I said, often sometimes just talking about a situation to a friend or someone you feel like that you want to and receive positive feedback or help you come up with possible solutions can really help make a difference and make you feel more relaxed and less stressed. The little video there just shows you about actually how you might respond to someone, that talks about empathy. So have a little look at that because I think it's really impactful. So we talked a bit about the bend or break, the flexibility. So flexibility is an essential part of resilience. By learning how to be adaptable, you can be better equipped to respond when faced with life crisis. Resilient people often utilise these events as an opportunity to branch out into new directions. And they can adapt and thrive and sort of think about those ways around these situations. So self-care we've talked about, and I think it's one of the things that I really want to stress is that, you know, we care for our patients so much, just take some time for you. So when you're stressed, it's even probably more easy to sort of neglect ourselves. You might start losing your appetite, ignoring exercise, or you might not be getting enough sleep because you're thinking over those things. But they're all common reactions, so I want you to think that's really normal. We've just talked about a few options that you could help with that, and we'll go over that a bit more in the supporting day as well, of how to access that support. So sort of start thinking about your self-care skills, what you've done, what you can do, what you enjoy. But I really want to emphasise that actually by taking care of your own needs, you can boost your overall health and resilience and be fully ready to face life challenges. And when we think about ourselves, I like this, that we think about ourselves as the compassion bank. So think of your compassion like money as a finite resource. We are all individual banks of compassion, and it's important that we're all bank managers. So you're aware of what you're letting out and what's coming in. When we think about the Bank of England's monetary policy, they aim for stability, so that, you know, the invested in, so what we're giving out equates to what money we've got coming in. So the compassion we've got coming out, we're still getting compassion in ourselves. Aim for low inflation. So, you know, if you're thinking about what you're lending out of compassion, actually, is that going to stay at a level that you can cope with? Isn't going to go too high that you can't cope anymore, and sort of take that off you. Set interest rates accordingly. So sort of set that compassion to, you know, who you need to invest in, what you need to invest in, and review regularly. You know, what can I do? What can I change? Have I got enough compassion myself and support? And informing central powers of when there's a predicted variance is not a sign of failure but an action call. It's about being aware of yourself, like I said, sort of preempting what might happen in the future, and actually how you can bring that yourself back down to a level where potentially you can cope with that added need for your own compassion. So compassion paid out of your bank account is what you're invested in. So there'll be things like your family, friends, colleagues, they're all invested in. Those things aren't going to change. You might lend it to your patients, their relatives, but what then thinking about what you'll gain from others. So we gained investments are those from family, friends, that support network you've got. You might borrow it from other team members when you get support from them. You know, a thank you from a patient can also be your own thing, or a compassion back. I've noticed how hard you're working, thank you so much. Those things, just to keep that stability. I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it. Problem solving. So obviously we know that when we've got a problem, that adds to our stress, and actually, you know, thinking about how we can deal with that. So I think it's really important that, you know, if you've got a problem that you're struggling with, if it's a new problem, make a quick list. Even if you need some help, you know, gain some support of different ways you could solve that problem. Experiment with different strategies and focus on developing a logical way to work through common problems. It might be that you try one thing and actually the next time you think that didn't work so well, let's try this option. But sometimes just writing them down, giving you different options can just really help. It doesn't take long. Write a quick list down. Establishing your goals. We're going to talk a little bit later on about how we might be able to break those goals down into littler goals, so we're not setting ourselves too high expectations that we're going to fail, and thinking about that from a leadership point of view as well. You know, don't put too much pressure on your colleagues, setting them little goals, and when they achieve that, saying well done. So when you find yourself becoming overwhelmed, like we said, checklists are great. Tick it off, makes you feel like you've reached that goal. We've talked about brainstorming and potential problems. It just makes you help you review those stressful situations in a realistic way, setting those realistic goals to help deal with that problem. Taking action. So when we're thinking about stress, it might be a problem that's been ongoing, but actually it's really important that we take action and try and deal with that head on. And focus not on what you've still got to achieve, but maybe progress within that problem that you've made, sort of thinking, well done, I've done this. Actively working on solutions so you feel more in control. Time, making sure you give yourself time to build up resilience if you're struggling with it. Don't be discouraged if it takes a little longer, a problem takes longer than expected to sort of deal with that. Building on your existing strengths, and resilience will dramatically vary, like I said, like stress perception does, actually how we cope, and our resilience will vary very differently from person to person. Thinking positively. So like we've said, it's important to try and stay optimistic, and how we sort of say that in our brains or out loud can have an effect on ourselves, but our colleagues as well. So the positive exercise and mindset exercise, hopefully you've all been able to match them to the different things and understand when actually the positive and the negative, what actually is a different way of thinking about it. And I think it will make a big difference into how you view things if you can try and think or twist that in your mind to be positive. It's about understanding that the setbacks are temporary and that you have the skills and ability to combat those challenges. So when we're thinking about something happening at work or at home, changing that in our mind that actually this is only temporary, this is just for today, I'll get over it. It'll be sorted in a week. I'm going to do these things, we're going to get better, we're going to get past this, things will get better. And that will certainly help with you thinking about the future and being more positive about it. So you and yourself again, like we've said, self-talk, remind yourself you are strong, and all of your, you know, the positives that you've got going on. Awareness, so your emotional awareness, and then it's important to understand why you're feeling something and why. Positivity, maximise your strengths and accomplishments and minimise your weaknesses and setbacks. Sense of humour, it's okay to laugh at life's frustrations. I'm going to talk exercise. Exercise has been correlated with stronger levels of resilience, and like we said, often when you feel stressed you want to ignore that, but actually just getting out for a walk, a run, a bike ride, whatever it is you like to do, can really just help offload and unwind a little bit. And spiritual needs, if you're open to it, reconnecting and strengthening your connection to the spiritual side that can provide you with strength. So that might just be sort of mindfulness techniques, religion, whatever it is, it's a way that you might be able to just help yourself a little bit. So when we think about well-being, it's about feeling well so we can function well. It's a state of mind in which an individual is able to realise his or her own abilities, cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and be able to make a contribution to his or her community. So these are the 5 pillars of well-being which are on the NHS website. So it's about giving to others, connecting, be active, be mindful, and keep learning. And this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he first introduced this in 1943 in a paper that was a theory of human motivation. And what he suggests is that actually without the basic needs, so food, water and rest, we can't then sort of move up each pillar to reach our full potential. So it's important that we get those basic needs, but we've got safety, so within our job, safety, security, a place to go, love and belonging, those relationships we talked about, that social side with our friends, families, and feel a sense of belonging, esteem, so feeling that sense of accomplishment, so focusing on those positives and trying not to dwell on the negatives too much. And then we can move on and we can achieve our full potential, push ourselves forward and remain in that sort of stretch zone to move forward and keep motivating. So this just takes it back to thinking about your impact as leaders on well-being, and that's about, you know, your resources and communication, so keeping people informed and equipped, so ensuring that your staff have the information they need to carry out their tasks, have the equipment they need, so that the resources they need, that they have a sense of control, so enabling them to have a sense of control of their own work, but also for yourselves feeling in control and happy that they're able to carry out those tasks. A balanced workload, so enable that to be, that it's achievable. Job security, managing change effectively. Work relationships, ensuring that collaborative relationships at work. We're going to talk a bit about relationships at work, but I think as a leader it's important that you're able to diffuse situations, so if there's an issue at work, you'll be the one that's sort of pulled upon and help to diffuse those situations and ensure that good team working can happen, so that we can ensure best patient care is carried out and people are able to work effectively. Job conditions, so ensuring satisfaction at work and fair rewards. Personally, I think just a thank you goes a long way, or just noticing someone's worked really hard. If you think about a shift that you've had where you've worked really hard and someone's just said thank you so much, you've worked so hard today, it makes such a difference. Just thinking about that, because it does have a massive impact on staff well-being. So thinking about leadership and managers, I want you to take a moment, so pause me, think about the best manager you've ever had, write down the words of how to describe them. And what was it that they did to make you have more good days at work than bad? Because that's really important. We're at work 75% of the time. We want it to be an environment that you enjoy, and I want you to have that effect on other people. So think about that. Why were they the best manager, and what was it they did to make you have more good days? So like we've said about relationships, as you know, inside and outside of work, not all relationships are positive, and that's human nature. But we must be aware that if there's an unkind act, it can then sort of spiral throughout a whole team. It's why we need to sort of challenge that head on. You can't function as a team that isn't sort of functioning well or got some sort of like mutual ground in a relationship. And we may have all experienced bad relationships inside and outside of work, and what that feels like. So corrosive connections, Jane Dutton was a psychologist who came up with these 4 steps in dealing with negative relationships. She talks about naming the problem, ensuring staff can say how they feel and sort of let it out. So ensuring you have an environment where open and honest conversations can happen. It's important that they're able to take control of the situation, set goals. So it might be that, you know, getting a smile from a colleague that you feel maybe there's a bad relationship there, and celebrate that, focus on the positives that you've had. Build your resources. Think about what helps you build your resources around you. So building those relationships, those positive relationships. We're not dwelling on that one negative one. Target and transform, and this is something for you to talk to your managers. So it might be that you're being, as a nurse in charge, you're being approached by a colleague to say that actually they're struggling with another colleague. It's important that we target that, maybe offering them a safe space to talk. It needs to be happening then, and supporting them through that, but it might be that we need to escalate it further, but for that moment they might just need us to sort of take them aside and have a conversation so things can move on, that we can work well on that day, on that shift. Impact of social support. So this talks about your team. It's found that teams who felt they had each other's back experienced greater emotional well-being. And like we said, good emotional well-being, it has a massive effect on how we function. We've seen what stress can do in terms of memory loss, errors, those sorts of things. So it's really important that we feel like as a team we've got each other's back, we've got that support. It will have an effect on our well-being and in how we carry out our jobs. Interesting statistic, surrounding yourself with people you care about and who care about you can add 15 years to your life. So as a manager, try to help create a team where when people feel under pressure, they know who they can go to, they are prepared to seek help, they know that their colleagues care about them. So when you're thinking about your previously, when we're talking about a line manager, the best manager we'd ever had, probably some of those things came up there. You felt like you could go with them non-judgmental, how they would be supportive. So I want you to think about yourself as a leader, ensuring that you're those things. Types of social support. Emotional, instrumental and international. So emotional is people who care for us and you feel cared for. They might listen to your problem, provide encouragement, positive feedback. And the instrumental, so people who provide tangible support, helping you get something done. So that might be your teams or the other teams in the hospital that come and help you, taking a problem off you. So it's about that delegation and feeling like you've got confidence that they can carry out that task. International, offering help through the provision of information, giving you advice on how to do something, giving you information that allows you to see things from another perspective. So ensuring you just got those people around you at work and at home that can provide that support. So normally we do this in pairs, but I want you to think about, and just pause me again, which role do you play to whom? Who provides you with each type of support inside and outside of work? How well do you understand the social support networks in your team? Who gets and gives support to who? Is there anyone who is more isolated? Anyone in the team who is over-dependent on? So just think about those things and then come back to me. So, building a strong team. So we've seen how much an impact a team dynamic can have and how important it is for us to feel like we belong in that team, and actually what can you do to make sure that your team feel like they're supported. So getting to know your team members as individuals and encourage them to do the same with others. That might just be knowing, oh, you've got a child of a similar age to me, or we've been married 25 years, or oh, you used to do that, or you always wanted to do this, or you could like running, or whatever it is. Just getting to know them on an individual basis just helps build that rapport and that support network there. Create an environment, like I said, where open, honest and constructive two-way conversations and normal role modelling that yourself. So ensuring that you're able to give feedback and you can receive feedback well yourself as well. Be confident and unwavering about effective performance and conflict management. Seek training and guidance where needed. So there is conflict management training sessions if you feel like you need a bit more support with that. I think it's really important that when things go well, we celebrate the success together. So, like I said, a thank you at the end of the shift, or a thank you for doing that, or oh, thank you so much for covering my break. Whatever it is, little things go a long way. But thinking about what you do in your areas, and is there anything more you could do? As we've said, human errors happen, and when something doesn't go so well, focus on what we can be learned, not what can be blamed. How can we sort of build upon that and all learn from a mistake and how we go forward? So we've talked about goal setting, and I think most of us focus on big goals, and it's important that we sort of try and break down those what seem like mountains into molehills, so making the impossible seem possible. So, when you're on the shift and you're getting added lots of things, and it seems like that's a big mountain, but actually if we just break it down into little things, thinking about ticking that off, getting that sense of achievement, and recognising that actually what you have achieved. For instance, we cannot reduce our waiting list to target level because we are understaffed. So this week our goal is to see X number of patients, that everyone in their teams gets a lunch break each day, that we get positive feedback from X% of our patients. So it's important that, when you have those targets that may seem unachievable, as a team or as your individual self, think about 3 things that you'd be pleased with, so proud if you achieve within your shift, week, whatever it is. But make them achievable. And recognise the success. So, like we said, what do you already do? Do you think you do enough? And how could we do more? And when we're thinking about these, I want you to really focus on how to handle the demands. So focus on that control and what actually you have influence of. Understand the pressures which trigger an emotional response in you and why. But when you're thinking about these, prioritise and be brutal. What you must do, what you should do, and what you could do. I think that will really help. We're 24-hour care, so if things you don't get done and you've tried your absolute hardest and you've done all the things that are vital for patient safety and care, actually some things can be handed over to the next shift. So why is resilience important? It's important that we're aware of all of this so that we can recognise the signs of burnout and ensure that we don't become burnt out ourselves. So using food, drugs or alcohol to cope, skipping work or coming in late and leaving early, withdrawing from responsibilities, procrastinating, taking longer to get things done, taking out your frustrations on others, isolating yourself from others, feeling helpless, overloaded or unappreciated, feeling tired and drained most of the time, detachment, feeling alone in the world, sense of failure and self-doubt, decreased satisfaction and sense of accomplishment, increasingly cynical and negative outlook, lowered immunity and frequent illnesses, frequent headaches or muscle pain, change in appetite or sleep habits, loss of motivation. This is why it's important for us to be aware of it, is that 15.1% of nurses felt burnt out in 2017. I don't have any statistics more up to date than that, but I think it's really important to be aware of it. And what causes burnouts? We've touched upon a lot of them, but obviously there's work and lifestyle. So our work environment might be that it's high pressure environment, it's monotonous, so when we're in that comfort zone, we're doing the same thing, it's unchallenging. Unclear or overly demanding job expectations, like we said, no control or lack of rewards. So there's some things we can influence for ourselves and our colleagues. And our lifestyle, it might be about not getting enough sleep, working too much, lack of close supportive relationships, taking on too much. And we're thinking about taking on too much, that paint bucket, think about yourself, think about it. Working too much, obviously we're all probably a lot of us are doing bank and booking people onto bank. Just have a look at their shift and say, can you do that? Is that going to be too much? Let's think about this before you do it. Thinking about their choices as well, and just supporting them, and that's just showing support for them. So just a brief summary, wellbeing matters. More good days in the work for NHS staff means better patient care. Managers have an enormous role to play in creating or breaking good days at work, showing you genuinely care about your team members and adjust the balance of challenge and support required. The 3 areas which makes the biggest difference to whether NHS staff have good days or not are having a supportive team, feeling that they are making a difference, and being able to have a manageable workload. So ensuring they're able to go back to that must, could and should do things, prioritisation of their care. You can influence these factors directly and build your team members' capacity to cope with pressures in these areas. Thank you very much, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed today. I'll see you again in the webinar for the supporting day, which will be a bit more interactive. But if you've got any questions in the meantime, please feel free to find me. We can certainly meet up on a one-to-one basis at a socially distanced level. But thank you so much, and please feed back to me as to how you think today went. Thank you. Take care. Bye.